Connor. I run a YouTube channel named Counterpoints40K. Azhurai, I think you're a mutual on Twitter and Discord. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Nice.
We've been mutuals. We were mutuals for a while on Twitter before you got booted.
Yeah, so unfortunately I did get ban-hammered for doing a Squidward meme, the I'm gonna kill you Squidward meme. I did that in reference to a gentleman who was talking about how inflation and unemployment needed to go up so the working class could learn its place, and I did we're gonna kill you Squidward meme, and Twitter took that as a legitimate threat. So I lost a 20,000 follower Twitter profile, but now we're back up to like 1,500 or 1,600 followers, and it's all good. It's all good. It's all in the game. But yeah, so what is, can you introduce yourself to the people at home, and can you also tell us a little bit about how you came into the wonderful world of Warhammer?
Okie dokie. I'm Azhurai. You probably know me from Connor's Discord. I've been in there a while. Haven't been as active as of late, but I'm making a bit of a comeback. How I got into 40K was I was introduced to it by my father with the Dawn of War franchise, and we used to build and paint armies together. He never taught me to thin my paints when we were doing that, but I've learned now. Most of my introduction was through the video games and the Horus Heresy books.
Nice.
The miniatures have been the most recent addition to my I guess my fandom of 40K.
Mm-hmm. What's your first faction?
My first faction was Tau.
Okay, very based. You know, like I think you. So I kind of want to prep everybody at home. We do plan on talking about female space marines, but you know, obviously we don't want to make every single 40K conversation about female space marines, right? So we're going to talk about it for a little bit and kind of like, you know, retcons or headcanon or what GW should do and why and all that kind of stuff. So we'll talk about that for a bit. But then also there's other cool things, like some of the Space Marine factions are getting, or not the Space Marine factions are getting retired, but some units in the Firstborn versus Primaris line are getting combined. Some people have been complaining about that. 10th edition, the gameplay mechanics haven't been as smooth as, let's say, 8th edition or even 9th. So there's been some complaints about that. And also Warhammer Fantasy is coming out. So realistically, there, you know, whatever we talk about is we're all game. But do you have anything else you wanted to talk about before we get into the female Space Marines thing?
No, I'm ready to get into it.
So hit me with it. Do you think they should be retconned? Do you think they should be brought in now, and why?
Okay. So when it comes to actually putting them in the lore, I'm a bit give or take on it, because really I only want the models, like something I can use in the tournaments.
Okay.
The official tournaments. But if I were to actually add them in lore, I think the way to do it without pissing off the majority of the fan base would be there's two options. Either one of the lost Primarchs was a female Primarch. That's a really easy retcon. Or you can just make Bile end up through his warp factory making female Space Marines and then being Chaos specific.
Well, okay, so that's actually something that I wouldn't mind, is Chaos female Space Marines. And the reason why I think that that is perfectly viable is because the warp already turns people into like bird demons, and you know, yeah, Galvor back, and we just watched a Hammer and Bolter episode a month or two ago where they turned one of the Emperor's children into like a minotaur and the other one into like a bat creature and all that kind of stuff. So female Chaos Space Marines is actually pretty interesting, because you know, you could just say through warp fuckery that's already, you know, that's entirely possible. I can buy that. I can buy that for $1. When it comes to Belisarius Call, are you? And we'll talk about the models in a second. But with Belisarius Call bringing in the females, what would be the lore motivation?
Wait, did I say call or bile?
Sorry. So I think you said bile for chaos, but I think you might have mentioned that one of the Primarchs could have been female. And then also some people have brought up Belisarius Call just was fucking with Primaris gene seed and he figured out how to make females. That was the other one.
All right,
that other people have brought up.
In lore motivation is that the Imperium is set on all sides. The Tyranids are ramping up this shit. More hive fleets are popping in and out by the millisecond. Kadir recently got kablooied. There's a lot of bullshit going on. Also, the Silent King is ramping havoc, last I heard. So you're gonna want more Space Marines, and given the bullshit recruiting practices that the chapters have right now, you have like 50% of the human population that isn't even eligible at the moment due to the sex restrictions. So
sure.
So just by
so you're doubling the recruitment population by making females eligible if Belisarius Call was able to figure out how to put gene seed into females.
Yeah.
Okay, I already feel the biological essentialist arguments coming up of like, well, you know, only 1 in 1,000 men is even capable of doing it, and there's less women who are, you know, freakishly strong, et cetera, et cetera. But since it's basically a space fantasy universe, I could, you know, it's not my favorite, but I can deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
The frustration though from a current lore perspective though is Sisters of Battle and Sisters of Silence. Now, Sisters of Silence haven't had a range update, but Sisters of Battle have. And so what are your problems, or what do you view are the community's problems with Sister of Battle and Sisters of Silence? And this might actually lead into the models, by the way. But what is your problems with them as a faction?
All right, so in comparison to Space Marines, Sisters of Battle are really restricted in their aesthetics and the way they operate. Mm-hmm. Like Space Marines, you have aesthetics ranging from your space sharks, your space wolves. You have your fucking Roman Space Marines. You have any aesthetic you can think of, and you could logically see that some Space Marine chapter actually taking that aesthetic. Space Marine models are way easier to kitbash than Sisters of Battle models. While it's definitely possible, you can do it. The proportions aren't always the easiest to work with Sisters of Battle. And Space Marine models are just the it's a lot easier to, you know, shave off the Aquila or glue random shit onto a Space Marine chest plate than it is to sand down the titty socks and cut off the robes.
Is that the technical term? Titty socks.
Okay, so when it comes to female armor in fantasy universes, you have. Yeah. So normally you have the breastplate. It has the one bump and that's it. Then you have boob plate where it has like the indent in between the boobs. And then you have boob socks or titty socks where like the boobs are perfectly shaped.
To like the size of the titties.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, you know, I was thinking that because they actually did a fantastic job with, what was it? The most recent animation. Come on. Don't fail me now. Pariah Nexus. So I felt like the armor looked great. But then I did think while she was running around doing, you know, power armor, kung fu, and like killing people and blasting them, I was like, man, do they custom design every piece of sister armor where it's like perfect for their titties, you know? Or do like some sisters have to pad, or do some sisters, are they just like in pain all the time because like the armor is so yeah. Which weirdly works with the lore. But if I was to steel man your complaint, it's the lore versatility was one of the problems, and also the models are not as dynamic and easy to kitbash. Did I hear that correct?
Yeah. Also, so even though the Space Marines, they have their Codex Astartes, you have plenty of different chapters that don't even follow that shit. But with Sisters of Battle, even though we know for a fact that the Imperium, despite being a theocracy, has a wide range of different types of Emperor worship, all Sisters of Battle orders seem to be
They're
like,
all zealous.
yeah, well, not just zealous, they're one specific sect of Emperor worship. Like,
yeah,
you'd expect, given the size, that you would have a bunch of different sects, and that hell, they'd even fight each other over their sectarian differences, but we don't really.
Yeah, you don't get that in the lore necessarily. So I guess this begs the question with headcanon versus making it lore. And so, you know me, you've known me for a while. I'm a sexist. I want my little boy toys. I want to play with my little GI Joes, and I want to put up a sign that says no girls allowed. And that's the way that I want it. And you know, that being said, I'm probably not as sexist as most people. So, for instance, like the Sigmarites in Warhammer Age of Sigmar, them having, you know, Storm. God, why can't I think of their name? Storm. What are they?
Wait,
Storm called Storm hosts. What are the main guys? Stormcast. Like I see like a well-designed chick in armor who looks like she can cut people's heads off, and I don't give a shit. Like, you know, the whole Black Talon series, like it's like they got a female lead. Is it weird that like 90% of violence is committed by men, but we seem to consistently get female leads? A little bit, but at the same time, it doesn't really chafe my ass that bad. Plus, Neve Storm Talon is a cool character. But so for instance, if there was just like randomly, if like female Space Marines had already been there, I don't think I would given as much of a shit. But it's kind of like the culture war, tug of war stuff that kind of rubs me wrong. But let's kind of get into the models. So do you currently play competitively, or do you want to play competitively?
I definitely want to. Main thing holding me back is actually getting the money to buy enough.
It is expensive. It's a lot of time.
It's plastic crack. And you put your heart and soul into painting each model and making them unique. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist with that. You know, I'm not the best with green stuff, but I don't like each one just looking the same. I need to kit bash.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% there with you. Everything I have is Primaris scale. I have what is it? I have a bunch of firstborn units, but I use Primaris bodies. I kit bashed in old armor, old helmets, old guns, all that kind of stuff. I did new Vanguard veterans, and I used Custodes, even though this is heretical. I used Custodes bodies because they kind of look like Sanguinary Guard. So I used those as like Primaris Sanguinary Guard bodies. And this was before we were getting a bunch of like Primaris Jump Marines and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, like, so kit bashing is important. And I also understand the thing about proportions, because I've been kit bashing Imperial Guard, and it's actually impressive how giving Primaris Marine models are versus how demanding Imperial Guard models are, because they're so small, they're dainty, and therefore more difficult to kit bash, basically. So let's say all the games that I have played are narrative. And the reason why is because what I've understood from the tournament scene is that the competitive players are win at any cost. So they are not so much focused on building a cool narrative in their mind by having a battle. They're more focused on how can they take advantage of their faction, their rules, and the meta of the game in order to actually win the tournament. That's the way that they do it. And so that doesn't sound particularly fun to me. I much more prefer having like a narrative battle going on. And so I think the rule is 100% GW plastic for tournaments. Have you heard anything different?
I have not. I've honestly, I feel like it should at most be 80% as the standard, or hell, have GW set selling some 3D print STLs. and you, as long as you use like officially source shit, and you can prove to the people hosting the tournament that you are, like, I feel like GW is way too restrictive with it.
Sure. So if we were kit bashing female Marines, just hypothetically, what would be the difference in aesthetic? So for instance, like, I'm assuming we wouldn't have booby plate, right?
Nope.
So would you just keep the standard armor, or would you want it seen to be designed practically for a female form?
I would probably, to differentiate, I would probably use, I think Phobos is the tactical one that's a bit more lithe than normal Space Marine armor, right?
Sure. Yep.
I would probably use Phobos armor for the female Space Marines, and the more bulkier forms of power armor for the males. Because if you want people to notice the difference, you have to make it distinctive.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to give them like titty socks. At most, I'm going to give them some. If I'm kit bashing, I'm going to give them some Stormcast heads.
Mm-hmm.
And that's at most, because I like having my people not being dumbasses and not taking off the helmets. Pretty easy to get your head blown off when you're not wearing one.
Well, and that's kind of what I was wondering too, because like 90% of my dudes are wearing helmets, and so the only people that I have who aren't wearing helmets are some characters. All my main characters, my chapter master, my captain, my librarian, my tech priest, all those guys have helmets because they're not stupid. But I do have a few sergeants running around unhelmeted, and then my headcanon is like, these guys are veterans. They keep their helmets off for situational awareness, so they can smell things, so they can look around, et cetera, et cetera. And their whole job is to just be like more aware of their surroundings in order to be able to lead the squad. I know that like Space Marine armor is supposed to like give you a bunch of passive systems so you can have more awareness, so it kind of doesn't make sense. But I also don't want strictly helmeted people. I like having a few people with their faces revealed. So I guess kind of what I'm getting from chat, and I'm not trying to be a dick about it, but what they're saying is that for non-Games Workshop tournaments, it looks like a healthy chunk of them they'll go with like a percentage, like 50% or 80%, and then for non-GW tournaments, like people who really don't give a shit, they literally don't care about what you're doing. So is there
GW twice?
Sorry. So I mean, well, I am getting contradictory information from chat, so I'm going to blame them as well. So my understanding, but I also could have like a 2-year-old understanding. My understanding was that they came out in like 9th edition or 8th edition, and they said that it had to be 100% GW plastic. That's what I remember.
That's what I remember as well. Maybe some GW stores, when they host the tournaments, they're a bit more lax about it than others. It might be a regional thing.
And that's what people were saying in chat, is like, if it's non-GW affiliated, then it's up to the tournament organizer. That's what I've heard. So then my question is, it would be weird to me if you showed up with a Phobos army with Stormcast female heads and Sister of Battle heads and Sisters of Silence heads kit bashed on, and then you got turned away, particularly if it was 100% GW plastic. So is there anything that's kind of like preventing you from doing that or being interested in doing that?
Not really. There's no real, nothing really preventing it.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to, so I guess, okay, so the reason why sorry, my brain's a bit fried. It's a bit late.
No, it's okay. People are still talking about titty socks and titty recoil stabilizer tits in the chat. So don't worry, they're having fun.
But despite that, you could just use Sisters of Battle, Sisters of Silence heads, Stormcast heads. I want the way I look at it is that if GW were they don't even have to make like a exclusively female models. They just have to give us upgrade sprues so that we have more freedom of choice when it comes to what we use, and have it actually be in the right proportions. Like I could take it or leave it being canon. I just want the models, like I said earlier.
Well, and I think I'm not trying to tell you how to model or paint or enjoy the hobby or whatever, but I would say that from my experience, I think Stormcast are actually pretty well proportioned with Marines, and as a result, I think you probably could do a head swap there. Also, I've noticed with Sisters of Battle are also power armored, so I don't think the scale would be that off. So I think it would be okay, but obviously you got to experiment and you actually have to try it first. So, all right. So we kind of talked about that, and lore, you said you could take it or leave it. Kitbashing, you want it to be accurate. I wanted to throw a pitch your way, and kind of see. You don't have to agree with me at all, but it's something that I'm deeply considering doing because I kind of don't want, no, YouTube is, but I usually don't stream 40K talks. Sorry. Somebody was asking me a question in chat. So this is something that I've been thinking about because not everybody wants to or cares to play competitive games. And it seems like one of the frustrations is titty armor. That's one of them. And then two, it also seems like being cramped in the narrative of Sisters of Battle, right? And so the solution that I came up with is there's a fantastic artist on Twitter called Graffiti Soul. Have you seen them?
I think, haven't you shown them on stream before?
Maybe. And since you just said that now anyways, I think I'm going to share them now. Because what they did is they made a whole bunch of like tactical models. They created like a fan faction called the War Pigs, which is their Space Marine chapter. But they also made associated Imperial Guard and Sisters of Battle. And so what they did is they made tactical sisters that don't have booby armor. And I was just thinking these would absolutely fucking kill as third-party miniatures. And then the headcanon, I'll explain the lore canon while I'm looking for the art. So my lore would be that when the Eye of Terror got ripped up and it turned into the Cicadrix Maledictum or whatever, when it turned into the Great Rift, there was a whole bunch of Sisters of Battle who got, cut off in the various wars and campaigns. And as a result, they had to piggyback with the Space Marines. And so as, they still zealously follow the Emperor. They still believe the Emperor's a god, et cetera, et cetera. But they found that they needed to be more and more tactical as they served for longer and longer with the Space Marines. And so as a result, they adopted their armor, they changed some of their stuff, blah, 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 blah. The Inquisition is keeping a stern eye on them, but now as a result, they're more practical, tactical Sisters of Battle than they are, fucking nuns with guns and bolter bitches, right? Yep. And so how does that lore strike you, or is it not enough?
So I think I would be happy with that if we got models to go with them. Okay, yeah, this is some pretty badass art right here.
Yeah.
You can all right, so some complaint I can already see coming from some of the anti-FSM people would be by taking away the titty slots, you make them less feminine. But to me,
who cares? Fuck them.
But to me, even with the helmet on, if you place this Sister of Battle right next to a male guardsman or a Mister of Battle, you could tell just by the silhouette that this is a woman, based off of they have an hourglass shape, wider hips, slimmer shoulders. Like,
Yeah.
A lot of these people feel like they haven't actually seen real women, so that's why they can't tell if something's a woman without the exaggerated features.
Sure. Well, and I agree that like the reason why I don't care about like tits being like prominently featured in armor or whatever is because they the whole point of this, right? Like the whole point of this is to have exaggerated warfare, right? Like so take whatever is cool about war, because obviously real war is horrible, but take all the cool stuff about war and make it awesome. And that's pretty much 40K. So for me, having nuns with guns or bolter bitches or whatever, that's fantastic. I love stereotypes. I love, good looking women running around in power armor killing things. That's great. But also part of the reason why people get into the lore is just because of like military martial badassness. And so I have to assume that there's some women and some, folks out there who they're not attracted. They want to see themselves represented. Like they want to see cool models, but they also want it to be practical and tactical and cool. And so in order to play to that aesthetic, I currently, just sharing this with chat, this artist also did an Uruk-hai, Krork. So the orcs that came before the orcs that came before the current generation of orcs that were supposed to be like giga intelligent and huge and violent and all that kind of stuff, they were called Krorks. And so this guy made a Krork model that I'm showing on screen right now that is based off of the Uruk-hai armor from Lord of the Rings. And so I'm paying somebody to 3D model this. And if they 3D model that successfully, then I am going to ask them to do the tactical Sisters of Battle.
Okie dokie.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll send you some. So I can get you to get off of the female Space Marine kick.
A side note.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see how you felt about this, but personally, I do feel that Sisters of Battle helmets are much cooler than regular Space Marine ones.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. No, I think that I like the old school Darth Vader Space Marine helmets, but I have to agree, I am absolutely sympathetic to the fact that Sister of Battle helmets are awesome, especially after Pariah Nexus. Like her closing her visor and the chin guard coming up at the same time to lock into armor, that was insanely cool to watch.
Would you mind if I brought up some like plot detail, plot ideas that would be opened up if female Space Marines were added to the lore?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right,
yeah, because I do have one that I have beef with, but but sorry, go ahead with the ones that you have.
Okay, so female Space Marines are added to the lore. Doesn't matter how. Some things that immediately open up. You can give the Space Wolves. They have Space Valkyries now. Could fill that with Sisters of Battle, but for whatever godforsaken reason with GW, they haven't done that yet. You can, how a lot of chapters went batshit insane when Primarchs were being shipped out to them, and they had to get the Custodies to force them to take them on. You would have that, but like by 11, if you were to add female Space Marines without a retcon. And that would be like how you would get a bunch of chaos FSM, because you would have like this.
They get rejected by all the sexist males.
Yeah, and it would make sense with the setting. Especially, hell, you probably have like Mechanicus sex that don't even outfit the female Space Marines because they're tech heresy. Like,
right. Why are you screwing with the Emperor's designs? What the fuck? Yeah.
And I feel like you would have a lot of really just you'd have a lot of interesting ways you could go with this. I feel like the main problem with female Space Marines is not their addition; it's the way they are added, not if they are added.
I agree, but okay, so doubling the recruitment population is I think that's okay. I don't think I think that the previous Primarchs have been mentioned to be male, like the missing Primarchs have been called like he and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
and then also I think it would be weird if an entire legion, because I think it's like the Lost and the Damned or something like that. I forget which one it was, but basically there's some allusions in the lore to the fact that one legion was just like totally lost, like the Primarch was totally lost and they weren't able to find him, or they did find him and he was dead, or
the
something like
Lost
that.
Legions.
Yeah,
The Lost and the
well,
Damned are the demon Space Marines that fight for the Emperor.
well, I think there's an implication that one of them was just like gone, like they found them but they were dead or something like that. And the Forgotten and the Lost. And then the one that's forgotten, I think it's heavily implied, if I remember correctly, it was like the Space Wolves and the Dark Angels like killed them because they were, you know, whatever was going on there. And so for those two purged Primarchs, I kind of feel like it would be weird if you had like a female legion that was murdered. Like, that would be like, that'd be interesting. But I think it would be weird. And you would also have to go back to a few Horus Heresy books and change it from he to she. But then that causes like a whole like intrigue and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, so for me, the Lost Primarchs is not as compelling. When it comes to, and then also I think that for the 10,000 years, like 30,000 to 40,000, I think that's been written so exclusively with like males as the Space Marines. I think it would be weird to be just like, oh yeah, women were here the whole time. I think that'd be weird as fuck.
Yeah.
So that brings in like Belisarian heresy, right? Like Belisarius Call, he's fucking with Gene Seed. He wants to do some wild shit. He thinks that he can double the recruitment population, even though there will be like less females who will be, you know, available for all the biological reasons that we talk about when we're talking about, you know, basically like the what do you call it? The bimodal differences between males and females. He still thinks that it would be an advantage to double the recruitment population, so he does it. One of the flagrant issues that I see. Now, you brought up a bunch of interesting problems that I think could be explored through lore, but another problem that just seems like so bold that I don't even know why anybody in their right mind would fucking, you know, do female Space Marines is that the Chaos Gods are all about temptation, and they're all about temptation for power. Specifically, when it comes to Space Marines, oftentimes they will appeal to the fact that they are better than the rest of humanity. This happened in the Horus Heresy. This happened with, you know, like the Red Corsairs and all that kind of stuff. When they rebelled, they were like, well, why the fuck are you even bending the knee to the Imperium? They're a bunch of fucking mortal dickheads who are fucking you around. Why do you even obey these people? And so when you add in females, for me, it's like, not only do you have the Nazi parallels of the Ubermensch, like the superhumans, but it just seems like such an obvious W for the Chaos Gods to be like, hey, you've been gene modified in XYZ ABC. Your humanity has been robbed of you. Because of the gene seed implantations, you're asexual now. We can, through Slanesh, we can restore your sexuality. You can, you know, join with the female, you know, big-titted mommy dommy Space Marines, and you can create a new race of transhumans who wipe out humanity. And so for me, that just seems like an obvious issue.
I see what you're saying. Now, personally, I would love a book about that. I think you could have a whole fucking trilogy by Dan Abnett about these Ubermensch Space Marines going on and fucking and the Inquisition trying to purge them all. But I feel like this would just fit with how 40K has been going, because I don't know about you, but it feels like it's been trending down a similar way that fantasy went before it became Age of Sigmar, where things are getting progressively worse. All the big guys are coming out to play.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have the Primarchs returning, and like, what's the point of them coming back unless you're gonna have a huge ass battle where you bash them together?
Sure.
Like, and with all the Tyranid hive fleets, I don't really see a way that I don't see a way they can do this where anyone survives. I feel like we're just gonna have a
Well, I have I have an idea right there, and Games Workshop is more than welcome to steal my idea. So my idea is Warhammer 30,000 was the corruption of an age of an enlightenment, right? That's what it is. So whether you're talking about the tabletop or the lore, you're talking about like the ambitions of humanity being corrupted and falling apart, just as victory seems within its grasp. And then you have Warhammer 40,000, which is really technically like 30,000 through, I think we're up to like 42,000 now. So you have like 10,000, 12,000 years of a dead empire clinging together to what it can as it circles the drain, right? In spite of this, you still have humanity weirdly. Like you could live an entire life in the 40K universe and never even know that there was like chaos or Xenos or whatever, because the time scales are so big. And so I think you're right that progressively through each century we're getting Primarchs back and we're getting Demon Primarchs back. So what I would do is I would line this up for like a giant mega battle towards the end of Warhammer, towards the end of like 50K or whatever. And then I would have Chaos win. And so they would kill the Emperor, Terra would explode, the Astronomicon would go out, Tyranids would, basically consume a shitload of people, Orcs would consume a shitload of people, Dark Eldar and Elves would, try to take advantage of the situation, Necrons would take advantage of the situation, et cetera, et cetera. Then I would start a whole new universe of Warhammer 50K, where half the Primarchs are dead, and the Primarchs are trying to hold on for dear life to this totally desiccated galaxy that is now ripped apart and everybody is dead. And then I would, since the Emperor is a perpetual, I would have it in their lore that they're hoping that the Emperor comes back in order to save them. Then I would do another 10,000 years of lore, and then I would bring the Emperor back again.
Now, if you bring the Emperor back, are we talking like flesh and blood or as a warp god?
Yeah, that's actually like an interesting question, because Sigmar achieved apotheosis. He was once like a flesh and blood human being, but he was powerful, but then he achieved apotheosis. So I think the answer would be yes. So I would have 30K be about corrupted dreams. I would have 40K be about raging against dying to the light. I would have 50K be about just being dead and holding on to hope when everything is gone. And then 60K I would have be the rekindling of hope. The phoenix rises.
Yeah. I mean, that would definitely be a fun ride to get there.
Yeah.
Not for the people in the universe.
Well, and you would also have like pretty dire consequences, because right now we've kind of been in this like perpetual stagnation, like this lore stagnation, where the Emperor is like, he's healing enough to communicate, but he's also been in perpetual agony and pseudo death forever. So, if you want the narrative to move forward, you have to make some moves.
Yeah, and I get the feeling that GW is a bit too cowardly to not like, they'll start making a move like what they did with the Eldar Death God with your brain, but then they'll like pussy out last second and make everyone mad. The people who liked that plot point and what was about to happen, and the people who didn't, everyone's pissed off because you have this, instead of going like balls through the wall with it, they just pull out.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, at the end of the day, like they do admit that they're all about selling miniatures, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what they're here for, is to make cool models and sell them and all that kind of stuff. Whereas a lot of us are here for the lore. I'm here for the cool models as well. And honestly, they could keep Warhammer 40k. They could bring back all the Primarchs as some kind of like weird demon warp creatures and or actual demons, or they could bring them back as, you know, hey, you know, I found the Tree of Life. Lehman Russ returns and tries to restore the Emperor or whatever. You know, like they could bring them all back, and I would still play this game until I die. I would still play the video games. I would still paint miniatures. I would still do that, and they could never shift the 40k timeline. I would still do it. But there's obviously like a craving for consequential change, and so yeah, so that's kind of what I'm waiting for. But what else? You know, but so for me, I think I get pretty passionate about female Space Marines online because I feel like it's I feel like a boy, and I feel like the progressives are like my kid sister who want to play with my GI Joes, and I don't want them to play with my GI Joes, but they're about to yell at mom to let her play with my GI Joes, so I get really mad about it. So that's pretty much the way I feel about female Space Marines. I also do think that there are like legitimate things, like, you know, it would make the Sisters of Battle irrelevant. It would make the Sisters of Silence, you know, not irrelevant, but still like a giga minor faction. You know, and I would hope that if I made third-party tactical female Sisters of Battle, then those models would, you know, satiate that need, or Kitbashing would satiate that need. But anyways, GW is ultimately going to make this decision, right? So,
Yeah.
so they might tell the female Space Marine people to fuck off because they're not big enough to really raise big enough of a stink, and they might tell the chuds such as myself to fuck off because we're making too much noise complaining about the female Space Marine people. So
something about that, I really do believe that most of the fan base are completely ambivalent towards this issue, one way or the other. And it's just like the anti-FSM and the pro-FSM, we're both small minorities of people who actually care about this. Like, no matter how good of a way we can think of implementing or not implementing FSM, I do believe that GW isn't going to do it regardless. But I do hope that I do hope against that idea that they would, if there was a good way to do it.
Well, can I share something? Because I think there's a reason why a lot of people are really passionate about it on the anti-FSM side, which is basically like, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of places to be unapologetically male. And what I mean by that is Space Marines are the epitome of manliness in a lot of ways. They go through a normal puberty that then gets enhanced to a huge degree, so it becomes a power fantasy for a lot of teenage boys. They recruit from physically decrepit people like the Blood Angels do and all that kind of stuff. So even if you're like a gangly nerd or you're obese or whatever, like as long as you had a strength of character, there's still the opportunity for you to be like recruited as a Space Marine in the future, as long as you were like mentally strong enough. And then you become everything that the ultimate stereotype of masculinity is supposed to be. But there's a great cost, which is that you lose a portion of your humanity. And so as a result, it feels like a very militaristic, ancient, martial story about men in war, where men, like, they show off their greatest virtues in war, but they lose their humanity as a result. And so that's like a classic story, classic archetype.
Yeah.
And when it comes to pop culture, it seems like with Star Wars, with like Daisy Ridley being the lead, and with like not every single, but a healthy chunk of TV shows like having female leads or female supporting characters that are outshining the males. Or when it comes to Marvel, like the Marvels now is like, it's like Ant-Man is the lead. Doctor Strange was not even the lead in his own movie, where he got outshone by Wanda. And these are movies that I haven't even seen because I'm sexist. And then now the big release that is probably going to bomb is the Marvels, which is like an all-female cast. And
when it comes to the Doctor Strange, I don't know if that was accurate. I saw the movie and like Wanda was the villain, yeah, and she was pretty powerful, but most of it focused on Doctor Strange, and the whole point of him is overcoming like these massive odds against gods who he couldn't possibly win against just by his sheer persistence.
Which is tight, because that's how he overcame his first antagonist. I did see the first Doctor Strange, and I liked it a lot, because he overcame a god through sheer persistence and annoyance.
Yeah. And
oh, that was so awesome.
I don't agree that he was outshined in that one. Now, I do...
But do you understand the general complaint of like boys playing with their toys in their room and they're exploding and the GI Joes and 1980s testosterone and all that kind of shit, and it just feels like there always has to be a fucking girl interjected somewhere?
I understand. I can relate on some level to it. I don't wholly agree with it,
but there's also like not a lot of shit that like men, or at least stereotypically masculine men, maybe gay men, are more interested. But there's not like a lot of like stereotypically like female exclusive behavior that like men are incredibly interested in. Like, I don't want to take over Hallmark movies or trash reality TV or Barbies, although arguably the new Barbie movie was about Ken.
Well, I think that's because if we imagine ourselves in a different civilization where the gender roles are reversed, you've seen Futurama with the Amazonians, right?
Yeah,
that's the timeline we live in that timeline now. The men in that timeline would probably feel the need to break into female spaces if females were the more culturally hegemonic force in that society. I think we're about to level out when it comes to the crazy female Mary Sues in media. Black media.
I hope they figure out how to write women. That would be interesting.
Part of it is that a lot of these writers aren't being treated well. And they're being given like a workload and expected to do it with not enough time, and the corporate stooges at the top will change every little bit of edge to what they want to do to make it the most bland and marketable piece they can. Like, I feel like there's a lot of writers that have worked on these pieces and have wanted to do it more justice, but because of the fuckers up top, have not been able to.
Yeah, but can I share something that I kind of notice when it seems, and this is a pattern, so I'm not saying it's like one-to-one, but it also seems like male and female stories are different. And what I mean by that is when it's a woman's story, for instance, like Moana, right? Moana, and I'm trying to think of like another few stories as examples, but I'm getting tired. Alien. I think this is like my 4th or 5th hour streaming. Which one?
Alien.
No, Alien's fantastic. That's like a very masculine story.
Moana is also fantastic, though.
Well, sure, but I want to point out like a thematic difference. So it seems like in a lot of female-led media and female media, that women will encounter an existential threat, and then they will try to understand the threat, and by understanding the threat, they're able to transform it. And the example that I would use in Moana is like the volcanic demon lady or whatever was actually created by Maui or I forget the main character's name, Dwayne Johnson's character. But by stealing the heart of Tahiti or Tafiti or whatever, like men's greed caused the environmental issue. The woman tries to fight stereotypically like a man would. She understands the issue on a deeper level, and then she's able to transform the issue. And so she actually returns the heart of Tefiti or whatever to the volcanic demon monster, and then everything, you know, is restored in the universe or whatever. But oftentimes with male stories, it's like came to location, spotted bad guy, shot bad guy, won, end of story. And like, and so like, so it feels like with like a lot of stories, you don't have that simplistic black and white good versus evil narrative anymore. And I think that's another thing that's frustrating for men, because I think they like clear enemies.
I mean, I see what you're going with, but if you want clear enemies, I don't think 40k is the right setting for you when everyone sucks. Like,
yes and no. Yes and no. I agree with you. So I agree with you that there's no good guys, quote unquote, in 40k, because even the good guys serve like quote unquote good guys, like the Tanith First and Only and Gaunt's Ghost and all that kind of stuff. They're constantly getting fucked over by the Imperium, and also they ultimately serve like a xenocidal, theocratic, oligarchic, authoritarian nightmare. So I agree with you. But there are like good characters or good factions.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like the Far Side Enclaves. Like I think they're technically good, you know? Or they're doing their best in a fucked up situation. And that's also like a lot of the factions are like doing their best in a fucked up situation.
But so I guess my rebuttal to that is when the Tau were first brought onto the scene as like these goody two shoes trying to do the best they can, the community raged against it for a while. They didn't like the having like a clear good guy, and then because of that, GW murkied the waters with the Tau. With was it the 4th expansion where they started killing the Guevesa after.
Well, and not just that, there was also a question I think in the Dawn of War series about whether or not they did you know, not massacre, but like eugenics or sterilization. Yeah,
that wasn't canon though. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, I think what some GW creators have said. I don't know what they've actually landed on officially, but like it's all canon is one of the things that I heard somebody say. And so the reason why they say it's all canon, even though there's contradictory stuff, is you're getting the narratives from a propagandistic lens, right? So like a lot of the books that are pro-imperial, where like space marines are like, you know, just slaughtering like hundreds of fucking enemies and all that kind of shit, it might be narratively coherent and true, but it's also like the narrative that the Imperium tells itself. And so that's kind of how, and like also same thing with like orc stories or Tyranid stories or whatever, the way you rectify it is just like, this is all stories from a fucked up universe.
You know, it's funny that you bring this point up when, so I'm not saying you do this, but in my experience on the Hell side of Twitter, a lot of the anti-FSM people get really pissed off when you point out the propagandistic nature of the narrative, that you're not getting a reliable play on what actually happened most of the time.
Yeah, but that's because, no offense to, you know, if you're more progressive than I am or whatever, but that's because like a lot of progressives and lefties do like this like anti-reality thing where nothing matters because it's all relative. And I post this like dickhole fucking meme on Twitter sometimes, but I do feel like it's relevant, where it's like, oh, I'm sorry, you can accept dragons and elves, but you can't accept a BMW like Z28 or whatever. Like, and it's like, I get that that's a little bit of a straw man, but the whole point, like some people were arguing with me on Twitter and it got really frustrating, where they were like, well, you're using in-lore logic in order to justify something, but this exists as an outside lore, you know, company that's making decisions about the models they want to build. And I'm like, okay, but what separates good lore from bad lore, and what separates good narratives from bad narratives is whether or not they have like an internally consistent logic. And
Yeah.
so you might have imperial propaganda, like I'm sure, you know, Caiaphas Cain and Gaunt's Ghosts and the Ragnar Blackmane series. Those are all ones in which, like the Imperium, they achieve incredible results. But you also have things that show that it might be more serious and deadly than that. Like you lose Colm Corbec, you lose Bragg, you lose like really detailed, loving characters along the way. And so it might be imperial propaganda, but it's also it's tinged with like cold, hard, brutal reality. And so that's where, for me, I don't mind saying that like Imperium narrative slant Imperium and chaos narrative slant chaos, but I also think that there's underlying truth in the propaganda and the thematics.
So it feels like we're drifting away from female space marines.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
to just good lore versus bad lore. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm okay with moving the topics, but before we do, would you mind if I give my my spiel about the Lost Legion idea I had?
Of course.
Okay. So even though it's called the Lost Legions, it's not going to be Space Marine exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that so you have these aesthetics that don't make sense given the lore, but would be cool and would give players more options when building their armies. For example, you could give so female space marines would be one of the things you could include with this. You could also have Titanfall Tau.
Yes.
Pre-fall Elder, Chaos Tau, alternate heresy models like Adornian heresy version of 30K, and
yeah.
and the way you would do this is that you could either have it limited time only or made to order stuff. And I know that would be more expensive, but that way, if something doesn't sell enough, it won't be a huge cost for GW in the long run. They can just
the
and
yeah,
you wouldn't have to change the lore for that.
Well, and here's the challenge. So 3D printing and resin printing is on the way, and my understanding is that GW still does injection molding, if I remember. And the reason why is because they have a scale to justify it. So they make molds and then they print, you know, tens of thousands of miniatures, and they sell them for, you know, tens of dollars a piece. So they end up making, you know, millions over the course of time. But when it comes to like the model design and all that kind of stuff, and their technology has been getting so much better over time, the 3D resin printing is good. So I think you can do limited stuff. But this is where I would kind of want the GW to focus on canon, which they are wildly focused and dedicated to their own IP. But I would want fans to step up with the technology that's coming out in order to do custom stuff. So when you say Titanfall, style Tau, I think of two things. One, there are passionate modelers who have made Titanfall models. I'm going to go to, where am I going to go? My Mini Factory. And then there's also somebody called Piper Makes. And Piper Makes has redone the Tau line in better scale with cooler models that I don't want to say are like more Titanfall-esque, but they make more sense than the now 10 or 15-year-old models.
There's more of a sense of realism to them.
Yes, and I am going to show you both in just a second. Let me share my screen again. And so these are available in 75 millimeter and 100 millimeter for the Titanfall set. And then I guarantee you the Piper Makes kits are available in, the proper scale. And so the problem, not a problem, but the challenge here Let me share my screen with everyone. Share screen. Screens. Capture devices? No. Applications. Discord, OBS, Elgato. I have a Chrome. Why aren't you seeing my Chrome? Okay, I guess I'll just do screen. Go live. Okay, cool. So the challenge here is you have to buy a resin printer or an FDM printer. FDM doesn't print as well for miniatures, but so I mean, look at this fucking thing. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So here's BT. And I don't know if you have an emotional connection to BT, but I have an emotional connection to BT. And you can print them in like Tau scale. And also, like, look at all these different arms. They come with like different arms and stuff, so you can print him in different poses. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a Tau army. And then here is Piper Makes. And I don't know if you can see these, but these models are fantastic.
I wouldn't call these Titanfall Tau. I would call them more Armored Core Tau, if you know what that is.
Yes, I agree. But this one, the reason I'm not actually calling this Titanfall, but the reason why I was saying it has some Titanfall aesthetics is like this suit, which I think is like a broadside. It looks way more practical than the current broadside range. And so, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Titanfall kind of has the they kind of focus on the practicality of the Titans rather than just looks.
Yeah, but I mean, like, here's the the transport and I'm sure one of these can have a railgun. I don't know if this is like a Devilfish, if that's like the 2-seater thing. I'm sure you're more familiar with the units than I am. But the point is that this person basically redesigned the Tau line and made incredible models. Now you can buy them from like My Mini Factory. Like, you can just buy the models and have them shipped to your house and all that kind of stuff. But you can also buy a resin printer or whatever. So the challenge is finding these things and looking for these things and then investing in these things financially. But they are beautiful and you can do them. And that's where I love the kit bashing thing. But I would want GW to keep an internally consistent narrative for like what was official. Whereas I want people to build whatever they want to build. So for instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop my screen share. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get the Titanfall models. I am going to print them in scales that are appropriate. I am going to outfit them with Tau style weaponry that can be proxied as Tau. And then I'm also going to 3D print ODSTs and Marines from Titanfall and Halo. And then I'm going to use the Marines and ODSTs as Guevesa, like Fire Warriors. And I'm going to use Fire Warrior rules. And then I'm going to use the Titans as the suits, the crisis suits and all that kind of stuff.
That's
and so,
such a good idea.
And then my headcanon is that they're Dark Age of technology. They went out with, humanity, during the colonization of the stars. They got lost in time and space. And so as a result, they continued because they haven't been contacted since the Dark Age of technology. And as a result, they continued doing their own thing. So they developed wildly new technology, and it just happens to look like ODSTs and Colonial Marines and, and Titanfall suits. So yeah. And then I'm just going to play narrative games because I'm not, I never want to play win at any cost. If I had, just to give you an idea of win at any cost, there was somebody who had a repulsor executioner and they checked out the fly rule and they found out that they could technically be on top of a building that was outside of charge distance. And their opponent had like a melee based army. And so as a result, they were able to fly on top of a piece of terrain, never get touched for the entire game, and they nuked the little bit of shooting power that opponent had. And as a result, like, the game was virtually unplayable for the opponent.
That feels really scummy. People nowadays have such a tendency to optimize all the fun out of games.
But that's what I'm saying is, if I went to a tournament where the winner had optimized not by thinking about the way that narratively their army would have played and then playing that way, but instead they cheesed rules in order to maximize their opportunity to win. I wouldn't view that as getting together with a like-minded community to participate in a hobby we all enjoy and then playing competitively with like my best built list to try to win in a pseudo narrative fashion, but still actually doing my hardest to win every single time. I would view that as somebody like ignoring the entire universe that I came here for, and as a result competing for like the cash prize or the bragging rights of winning a tournament. And so I just wouldn't be interested in playing with those kinds of people. Whereas what I am interested in is building up my armies and then inviting over people to my house that I've made significant financial and time investment in, and then playing games in which they play their army as if they were the general of that army, and then I played my army as if I was a general of my army. And I'm sorry I'm ranting, but I want to rant just for another 30 seconds. This mindset resulted with so many funny fucking moments happening in games. For instance, there was one guardsman who survived my A10 Warthog Storm Talon blasting apart his squad. A commissar executed the member of his squad who ran away. He charged towards my Marines, killed a Marine with a Melta. Then he charged. Then I fell back because I thought it was hilarious. I fell back again. He like charged again. He like flubbed his shot. And then we made it a joke at the end of the game that if I could kill him in melee, that he was like a white shield from Cadia. So he was like a teenager or whatever. So out of respect for this guardsman surviving a Storm Talon massacre and also killing a Marine with a Melta, we were going to knock him out. And we were going to recruit him into the Space Marines.
I love that.
But guess what happened?
What?
So we were supposed to, so they said that we couldn't use Thunderhammers or Power Fists against him because if we used a Thunderhammer or a Power Fist, we would kill him, right? So we had to use our normal strength. So we used, strength 4 versus toughness 3. He won the save. And then the Imperial Guard army made it a priority that they would save this one stupid fucking guardsman. So they nuked every Marine that was within like 18 inches of this fucking guardsman. And so that guardsman, he's still a guardsman. He could have been in Astartes. He could have been a Space Marine. He could have gotten kidnapped. But the Imperial Guard decided to annihilate like 30 Marines in order to save one guardsman. It was fucking hysterical. So yeah, but that's the kind of stupid shit that can only happen in a narrative battle, because no way am I gonna dedicate, like 10 Marines or 20 Marines to trying to kidnap a guardsman. And no way is a guard army gonna dedicate an entire turn's worth of firepower and movement to saving one guardsman.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Unless that guard's army is ran by Caiaphas Cain, he might do it.
Yeah, he might do it. Yeah, but that's the fun thing though, is like you can create the movies in your head and the justifications in your head and all that kind of stuff. So it was just like, it was hilarious. It was funny. We came up with like the lore reasons why we were doing what we were doing, and it was just like, so for instance, like when my Space Marines withdraw, there is not going to be a 5-man squad of Space Marines that would draw from a single guardsman charging in with a Melta, right? But what I said in my head was, actually, this is a trap. We're withdrawing because we want more of, his army to come this way so we can fuck him up. And so that's like the only, sorry for ranting, but that's like the only thing. You can do that in a narrative game. You can't do that in a competitive game. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
they're too busy optimizing all the fun out in the competitive games.
Exactly. So fuck competitive, play narrative. But anyways, yeah, so we're hitting 10:20. I think I told you 9 to 11, but I have been streaming for 5 hours. So I think I started at like 6 or some shit. Yeah, so we're at like 4.5 hours. What
Do you want to get into
else?
Primarchs?
Yes, I want to hit whatever other subjects you want to hit.
All right. So I have an idea for how we can get 2 Primarchs for 1 deal, you know?
Okay,
So like let's just call him Snake Grim, the demon Fulgrim.
of course.
He has had a tendency to make Bile constantly clone Ferris, and this would be
Yes.
like it would actually be the Ferris, um, and he would try and convince him over and over and over again, but it would always fail.
Mm-hmm.
So what you could do, you have now that Snake Grim is back, he goes and tracks down Bile, makes him clone one more Ferris. This Ferris escapes,
Mm-hmm.
and in the process, Trazen he pulls what we like to call a pro gamer move and releases Clone Grim,
Yep.
and you can have this whole little plot about Clone Grim like atoning for what happened in the heresy. Ferris would still hate his guts, and you would have like it could be a very character focused story about the brotherhood of these 2 Primarchs. Well,
Uh,
and have Snake Grim chasing them the entire time.
I am 100% down for this narrative thing, and on top of that, I think they should do it. The reason why I think they should do it is I read like the first 5 books of the Horus Heresy, and I haven't been able to bring myself to. I also did like a few other ones, but I did like Battle for the Abyss, and I did Descent of Angels, and they were just kind of like they were just kind of meandering, so I didn't have as much fun as I did with the first 4 or 5. But in the first 4 or 5, you have Ferrus Manus caring about his legion while still being like a cold, ruthless, stubborn bastard, right? You have him caring about Fulgrim. You have him like saving Fulgrim from his own pride. You have him being betrayed and becoming so furious that he can't see straight. You have him charging down Fulgrim, and you have him getting killed, which, by the way, is like it's like a pretty narratively fitting death for how little you get to spend time with Ferrus Manus. But you could tell because of the way that he talked about his legion and serving with Fulgrim and serving with all that kind of stuff, there was an entire backstory to him. And also, it could have just been the voice actor, but tell me if I'm off. Have you watched the Game of Thrones series?
I have,
So
sadly.
I felt like, well, obviously the last few seasons were dog shit, but I felt like the actor for Stannis Baratheon could carry that role so fucking well. And it's because they're serious, they're stout, they're no nonsense, they just have that gravelly voice and all that kind of stuff. Am I off?
No, I think you're on.
Yeah, so I mean, I would love to spend more time with that character. So if they brought back Ferrus Manus, if they brought back Clone Grim, I would be totally okay with that. I think Horus has to stay dead for the heresy to have consequences. I think that Sangunius has to stay dead for, like, you could still have the Sanguinor, and, like, you could have the Sanguinor possess Mephiston at, like, an important part of the battle or something like that, or possess Dante at an important part of the battle, and then you could have, like, the warp demonic manifestation of Sanguinius, but I don't think that you can have Sanguinius, like, fully come back where his soul and his mortal life are intact.
Well, on that front, I feel you could, as long as Sanguinius is like heavily corrupted from the experience, because if the 2 angels of Baal are really like his soul split in half.
Oh no, if he came back as a dark angel?
Yeah.
Oh no, if he was like a revenant evil soul, and like people had to deal with the fact that he was like back but he was evil now?
What if he was like had a two-face situation going on, or a Jekyll and Hyde one?
Yeah, where he was just like fucking manic bipolar. Oh. Yeah, that's brutal. That'd be fucked up. I would read that.
All right. If you could redeem one of the demon Primarchs, like uncorrupt them we're excluding Magnus because everyone picks Magnus. Who would you choose?
Oh, well, I mean, I would do Perturabo, but then the Horus Heresy would have never happened. So,
no, like in the 40K setting. Like
in the 40K setting.
The Emperor mentioned that he could fix Mortarion.
Yeah, I mean, if you could bring back a Primarch from Chaos, I think it would. I think it would have to be Fulgrim, right? Because like Fulgrim's like the closest one. He still had like a light part of his soul. He was like, you know, the Emperor. The Emperor was like proudest of him and all that kind of stuff. I think narratively, it has to be Fulgrim. Um, I Mortarion, I think is too far gone, right? Like I think that's just part of his narrative arc.
Well, I
Um,
feel like if you did Mortarion, he would ask to like for someone to blow his head off the moment he didn't have the warp taint or corrupting his
right.
thought pattern.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then yeah, so I don't think it can be Mortarion. I do love Perturabo, but I don't think it narratively makes sense for him to bring it. Yeah, so if you're talking about my choice, Perturabo. If you're talking about narrative, Fulgrim.
Mm.
Yeah.
And by Fulgrim, we mean Snake Grim, not
I
Clone.
think Snake Rim should stay a thing. I like your narrative the best, where like Trazen has Clone Grim. Clone Grim actually has like a pseudo intact noble soul. Ferrus Manus clone is like the Iron Hands find out that Snake Grim and Fabius Bile have cloned Ferrus Manus, and they are duty bound to try to go free him. They launch like a daring assault that they don't have time to consult anybody else on, so they actually bust out Ferrus Manus, but they lose like, you know, thousands of you know, successor Marines and like a majority of the Iron Hands chapter in order to do it. They get him out, and then Clone Grim and Ferrus Manus have like a redemption arc where they go up against Snake Grim. I think that's a fantastic story.
I think there's something you could add to the story to make it to complicate it a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I recall, the Iron Warriors also have a big ass grudge against Fulgrim to what he did with Pretty.
Yeah.
Um, that whole curse nonsense for his apotheos or his ascension. You could
Mm.
also alert the Iron Warriors and have them try and not save Ferris, but fuck up Fulgrim's day.
Yeah, where it's like, hey, you try to buddy fuck us, we're gonna buddy fuck you. We're gonna take your planet while you're getting raided by the Iron Hands. That would be hysterical.
But
I would love it.
I want the focus to be more on Ferris and Clone Grim's interactions rather than the other people. Like
Of course.
you can have this the regular Space Marines doing the shit in the background and cut to them every now and then, but if I don't, I feel like it would be wasted potential if Fulgrim and Ferris were not the main point of view.
Yeah, if they just like make up instantaneously and then just move on, yeah, that'd be total waste. But the um the thing about Ferris, so obviously you would want him to hold a grudge against Clone Grim because he couldn't drop it. But also, one of the things that I want him to do is kind of like be at odds with his own chapter, because obviously they've gone into the full like robot, flesh is disgusting, let's become transhuman robots, blah 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 blah, whereas Ferris himself was more about like the steel of soul, but he didn't hate his flesh. And
Yeah,
so I think him seeing his sons actively hate their bodies and trying to become like robotic warriors or whatever would be that would be an awesome conflict.
this just gave me a bit of an idea.
Mm,
So you know how the Alpha Legion they had Alphaeus and Omega on the dual primer.
sure.
What if so? For Clone Grim, his Legion is a bunch of bastards now, and Ferris would be pretty disappointed in his. What if these redeemed and revived Primarchs they join their gene seed, not like mixing it directly together, but combining them into one legion?
Yeah, but the what to like a chimera
Not a
between.
time you would
Mhm,
have Emperor children gene seed Marines and
mhm,
Iron Hands gene seed Marines in the same legion. You wouldn't
mhm.
have Chimera.
Oh,
To,
got you. They would just serve together.
yeah.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, no, it would be interesting. The Sons of the Phoenix is the interesting one because like obviously they have a lot of Emperor's Children iconography and a lot of Emperor's Children traits. But they're supposed to be either like Chimera or like Traitor Gene Seed, but he wasn't supposed to. Which like I love the idea that there's like either full-on Traitor Gene Seed running around or like pseudo-splice Traitor Gene Seed running around in the Loyalist Primaris. That makes me so happy.
Well, you also have the traded gene seed running around from the traders who joined the Death Watch because they kind of have the
yeah, the Black Shields. Yeah. Lost in time and space, and then they joined the Death Watch. That's what I did for my Death Watch. I literally have representatives of all 18 legions. Now, of course, they're all successors or Black Shields or whatever, but you know, there's some traitors in there.
And eventually, those Black Shields are gonna bite the dust, and the Imperium isn't really one to waste gene seed if it's usable.
That is an interesting point that I didn't even think about. That would be hysterical. What if you had a Black Shield who fell in battle, you recover his gene seed, and it's like pure Iron Warrior or pure Night Lord or pure whatever, and like the tech priests are like, all right, don't tell anybody that it's Night Lord, but we're gonna do a successor chapter. That's fucking sick. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't 25 of successor chapters have Chimera Gene Seed? Yeah, so RC, my understanding is that Gilliman told Call not to use Traitor Gene Seed, and Call probably didn't listen. So, that's my understanding of it. So, yeah.
I want to see Call, Bile, and Trazen all get together for a fun little picnic.
Yeah, but like, see, that's the thing is you got to make it the cool thing about seeing a Luminor Ceres on screen, because like I know he's not like huge in the lore or whatever, but he's still supposed to be like a mad scientist character similar to Bile. I like it when they have people who are in their element. So I wouldn't want like Bile and Trazen and Call to all just like get in a room and just like wax philosophy. I would want them to be like actively trying to fuck each other over in ways that are like creative and interesting and in line with their character. That was actually there's a book called The Infinite of the Divine, and it's between two Necrons. It's Trazen the Infinite and Orican the Diviner. And it's basically because both of them were old men for Necron tier age when they were biotransferred. And so they both remember being old men. And so they're like cantankerous and judgy and snide and sarcastic and funny and mean. And that entire book is basically them like fucking each other over in only ways that Necrons could. And it's fucking hysterical because they're like doing like crazy warrior shit while they're like talking shit about each other about, you know, like in like an old man kind of way. But then they're even remarking on the fact that their biological bodies would not have been capable of like doing the warrior feats that they're currently doing to fuck over their opponent. It's fucking hysterical.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything else you'd want to go over?
No, honestly, like I've had a blast, and I love this universe, and I love talking about it. But I do think 4.5 hours of streaming is a tall order for me, and also I do have work in the morning, and I have 2 sick kids. But I was behind because I pushed everybody back from last weekend to this weekend. And then yesterday I was still dealing with the kids. So I just had to put everybody on the same day. So I'm pretty wiped, but it's not the last one. As a matter of fact, Tiberius brought this up in chat. He was saying like, why isn't this a panel and why am I not invited? So maybe we need to do a 40K panel. But the goal eventually is to separate out politics and 40K. So politics streams will go over to Counterfire, and eventually, once we get that channel built up, and then we'll just do 40K streams here. So we'll build an audience over time of 40K nerds who want to just talk about 40K for a few hours. So
I have one last thing before we hit the hay I'd like to bring up.
Sure.
But it didn't really fit with the rest of the discussion because it's more about the culture war side of the FSM debate.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that way too many of the anti-FSM people throw around the term tourist way too easily, in the same way leftists throw around fascist.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm saying that as a leftist myself. Like, I would say, given that how I got into the hobby, you can't call me a tourist. I love the franchise. I got in through Dawn of War. I love the models, all that shit. But like, you have people who they'll use any excuse to call you a tourist, whether it's you got into the franchise like a decade ago through the books, you got into it like when it first came out, but you didn't. You went too fanatical about it, etc., etc. You play Tau, that makes you a tourist, etc., etc.
Sure. No, I agree with you completely. And also they'll always try to catch you on like some random like lore thing, and they're like, "Ha, you didn't even know that." And it's like, "Yeah, but I also know 10,000 other things, asshole." And so that's the thing. It's like I learn something new every day in this fandom, and I love that, but I also hate how smug people are when I learn something new, because they're like, "What? You didn't already know that?" And I actually have the perfect example for you. Do you remember did you watch the Hammer and Bolter episode where Genestealer cult are escaping a Tyranid invasion?
I watched your breakdown of it, actually.
Yeah. A lot of people brought up the fact that why would the Genestealer cult be trying to escape the Hive Fleet, right? Especially if they called them there. And I had to check out the lore a whole bunch, and it turns out, so I'm going to tell you the one that I justified to myself, and then I'm going to tell you the one that I found out that's actually awesome. So when it comes to Genestealer cult, they're mutants, they're infected, whatever, but a lot of them like retain their human sensibilities, and even people who are infected with gene-seed DNA via the ovipositor, they're humans, but they're still under the sway of the Brood Lord. I always mix up Brood Lord and the other term for the same fucking thing. But anyways, point being that they're under that sway. And when the Hive Fleet arrives, the psychic connection between the Brood Lord and his brood for the Genestealer cult is severed as he sublimates to the hive mind. And so what happens is, I'm sure there's plenty of like Genestealers who sublimate to the hive mind, and I'm sure that there's maybe like more advanced Genestealer cult members that sublimate to the hive mind, but there's also a whole bunch of Genestealer cult members who don't. And so as a result, they're basically like mutant freaks, and they're staring into the face of a Tyranid invasion of what they thought was going to be like their salvation. And so basically just imagine like you throw this perfect overthrow of the planetary government, and then you wake up and you're staring into the maw of a giant Tyranid monster. So that's lore number one. Can I tell you how this lore gets even cooler?
Yeah.
So, do you remember the color of the Hive Fleet from that episode?
Not off the top of my head, no. Was it a different Hive Fleet?
It's purple and blue. Purple and blue is Hive Fleet Hydra. Do you know what Hive Fleet Hydra is famous for?
No, I do not.
They're vultures. So they swim in the wake. I forget if it's Kraken or Leviathan, but they swim in the wake of one of the bigger hive fleets, and any world that hasn't been already consumed because it wasn't important enough for the main fleet to consume, they consume it for themselves. And so they are a hive fleet that is picking up the leftover pieces ignored by another fleet. So doesn't it make more sense now that that Genestealer cults from one hive fleet were trying to escape getting devoured by another hive fleet? Doesn't it make more sense? Isn't that brilliant in a fucking way? Isn't it weird that the Hammer and Bolter people literally just colored some fucking Tyranids and they were like, they'll figure it out?
So another thing about it, though, that makes it make sense is that it would actually be really wasteful to eat all of the Genestealers, or Genestealer cultists, because you want them to escape and infect other worlds.
That was another one of the things that I kind of headcanon for myself, was like, well, maybe they wanted to, you know, infect another world, but then that doesn't really make sense for like why they would be, you know, freaked out, right? If they were like all a part of the plan, basically.
Well, the Tyranids are going to eat the ones that can't escape because they're obviously too weak to. So it's kind of the survival of the fittest. Hey, if you get out, you can propagate your genes further on.
Yeah. Yeah. And then somebody asked if Behemoth was for Chaos or Necrons. I think it's Kronos that hunts Chaos. I don't know of a Necron hunting Tyranid faction.
Think it's Kronos too.
Yeah. Kronos hunts Chaos. And because, so for Kronos, they hunt Chaos, but because like there's not a lot of calories or biomass in demons, there's other hive fleets that basically like they go ahead and they literally just leave soup planets for Kronos to refill before they go fight Chaos.
That sounds so fucking gross.
It is, but it's awesome. Like I hate Tyranids so much, but I'm gonna collect one army of every faction over my lifetime, just so I can play them, but also so I can kill them. And Kronos is gonna be my hive fleet for Tyranids, because I think their lore is so fucking cool, and their paint scheme is red and black, which looks fantastic.
The only problem with Tyranids is that they rarely make good antagonists in the books, because you can't really explore the reasoning behind a hungering, ravenous swarm, you know?
Well, the closest that I remember to them, one, they're still absolutely fucking terrifying. And then two, one of the ones that I read that actually did nail the fear that you would experience upon seeing a Genestealer was The Last Chancers. It's about a penal legion, and I forget the colonel's name is like Schaefer or something like that. But basically what he does is he takes a bunch of like convicts on suicide missions over and over and over again until he's down to like a dozen people. And then he takes a dozen people on one final suicide special ops mission. But if they survive the special ops mission, they get their freedom. And so there's this one character, I forget his fucking name. I don't know who the protagonist's name is, but he literally survives infiltrating a rebel base, and he comes face to face with a fucking Genestealer, and the way that he described like coming face to face with it, like I was shitting my pants, and I was like 16 years old when I read it. So 40K is fantastic action horror. I don't like horror, but I love action horror. So yeah,
this has been a lot of fun.
No, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming on. It was fantastic.
Would love to do this again sometime. We definitely have a lot of things we disagree on.
It happens. But as long as you like painting plastic miniatures, rolling dice, and making movies inside your head in which warriors slaughter the shit out of each other for your amusement, then that's enough.
But like, you're not a bad person whatsoever. Like, I feel a lot of people give you like they analyze you in a really weird way and write you off really quickly. I just feel like you have dumb takes sometimes, and I can usually understand how you get there. But like, you mean well, and you're not a grifter, and that's enough for me.
I appreciate that. I've been very mean to leftists on Twitter over the past 6 months, and I understand that I might be being less charitable than I was a few years ago when I was first coming up on Prime Kai and Hippy Dippy and all that kind of stuff. But also, I am tired. Like, I'm just tired of being charitable all the time. So I also understand if people are tired of being charitable with me. So, you know, it happens, and we don't have to agree on everything. But the main thing that I want to do when it comes to the Twitch and YouTube political thing is I want people to stop being so goddamn doomer pilled that they think that all they can do is just like watch their favorite parasocial commentator and just give them donos, and that's like all they can do in the world. I want people to do more than that. And so whatever my limited capacity is to try to white pill people in Twitch and YouTube politics and try to get them to do something productive, even if it's just playing Warhammer with friends, I want to encourage them to do that.
Speaking of which, any of Counter's audience that lives in Virginia, you better get out and fucking vote this week.
Yes. Go vote. Listen to Azhurai.
Well, have a good night, Connor.
I appreciate you. It was a pleasure. You have a fantastic night. Looking forward to the next one. All right, ladies and gentlemen and non-binary folk and otherkin. I am tired. We have been We've been live for 4.5 hours, 4 hours and 45 minutes, somewhere in there. We talked about Israel. We talked about modern American politics. And we talked about Warhammer 40K. And I had a blast on each and every one of them. But I am very tired. I have 2 sick children. I have to go to work tomorrow. And I am desperately looking forward to the time where I have enough money where I don't have to go into the wage cage anymore. So pray for me now and at the hour of my death. If you have donations, go ahead and do them. Join Patreon. Go become a YouTube member, whatever. And yeah, we'll bring you some more hot, fresh content sometime soon. I enjoyed your show, Connor. Rest well. Good discussions and a fun convo to end it. Godspeed, sir. Thanks for keeping it real, and I look forward to your future projects. Thank you kindly, Beezer. Warhammer Terrain, Warhammer Animation. Going to go back and do some of the breakdowns from older projects that I don't feel like we did a fantastic job on, so we're going to go back and do some breakdowns to celebrate breaking 50,000 scribes. Yo, when's that FIU event? I'll keep you posted, Jonah Boy. DM me on Twitter. Thanksgiving weekend. Actually, I know already. Thanksgiving weekend. So stay frosty. If you're available that weekend, if you're still in town, DM me and we'll meet up. So, parasocial love to you and yours. I sincerely appreciate y'all hanging out with me tonight. I hope y'all have a beautiful evening, a beautiful day, and a beautiful week. Catch you in the next one. Bye.